Rejection is the quiet chain wrapped around most people's lives. You don't see it, but you feel it. Machiavelli would look at today's world and say, "Break this chain," and suddenly everything and everyone starts bending around you. Right now, somewhere out there, there's a guy who won't speak to the woman he likes because he's terrified she might say no. There's a woman who keeps brilliant ideas to herself in meetings because she doesn't want to risk being shut down. There's someone who hates their job but never asks for a raise, never applies for a better position, because they can't stand the thought of being rejected. None of them are free. They're not being held back by a person, a government, or a rule. They're being held hostage by a feeling, the fear of hearing no. But here's the twist you've probably never been told. Rejection is not your enemy. In fact, it might be your most powerful weapon if you know how to flip it. In this video, we're going to take Machiavelli's dark understanding of human nature and apply it to the thing you secretly fear most: being rejected, ignored, dismissed. You're going to see why the most dangerous people in the world are not the ones who avoid rejection. They're the ones who walk straight into it and come out stronger every time. By the end, you'll understand why fearing rejection makes you weak, predictable, and easy to manipulate. And more importantly, how to turn no into pure fuel. Before we dive in, I want you to anchor this mentally. Drop this in the comments right now. I embrace rejection. 1. The psychological trap of rejection. Why most people stay weak. Let's start with a brutal truth. Most people don't just dislike rejection. They worship it like a god. They let it decide what they say, who they approach, what they ask for, and what they never even attempt. They don't move unless they think yes is guaranteed. That's not caution, that's slavery. Now, here's the part that's not your fault. Your brain treats rejection almost like physical harm. When someone dismisses you, ghosts you, laughs at your idea, or says no, the same region that lights up when you're physically hurt gets activated. Your nervous system reacts as if you've been punched. Thousands of years ago, that made sense. If your tribe cast you out, you didn't just feel sad, you died. So your brain evolved a primitive rule. Rejection equals danger. Back then, it was useful. Today, it's a trap. You're not in a cave anymore. A girl saying no won't kill you. A boss turning down your proposal won't leave you starving in the wilderness. But your brain doesn't know the difference. It fires off alarms like your survival is at stake, even when the only thing at risk is your ego. Look closely at your life. How many of your biggest decisions have been shaped not by what you wanted, but by what you were scared to be rejected for? The job you never applied to because you thought, "I'm not qualified enough." The person you never spoke to because they're out of my league. The business you never started because investors will laugh at me. The truth you never said because what if they don't like it? You were trained by family, school, social media to treat rejection as failure. But that's completely backward. The real failure is the life you never lived because you were trying to avoid hearing no. How fear of rejection makes you easy to control. Here's where Machiavelli would get interested. What actually happens when you're terrified of being rejected? You don't become nice. You don't become kind. You become predictable. You become controllable. You become weak. You start shaping your behavior around other people's imagined reactions. You soften your opinions so they don't offend anyone. You shrink your ambitions so they don't threaten anyone. You censor yourself so no one can disagree with you. You call it being considerate, but really, you're negotiating with a phantom jury that only exists in your head. And the people who hold power over you, they love this. They love that a single no can stop you from asking. They love that a raised eyebrow can make you backtrack. They love that a little bit of disapproval turns you into a puppet. When you're terrified of rejection, you hand your self-worth to other people and beg them not to drop it. You live on scraps of approval, likes, replies, attention, validation. You don't move unless you're certain someone will clap for you. You don't realize it, but you've gone from potential ruler to obedient follower. The vicious cycle: fear, neediness, more rejection. Here's the darkest part. The more you fear rejection, the more you actually attract it. Desperation leaks out of you. People can feel it in your tone, your body language, your texting cadence, your pauses, your over-explaining. Neediness has a smell, and it repels. When you're terrified of no, you try too hard, overshare, overcompliment, over-apologize, overstay. You walk on eggshells around people you want validation from. You adjust your personality in real time to keep them comfortable. And whether they're conscious of it or not, they lose respect for you. Think of the people you admire most. Are they begging for anyone's approval? Are they auditioning for acceptance? Are they reshaping themselves like clay to be liked? No, they're rooted. They're solid. They radiate. If you like me, good. If not, that's fine too. That's why you respect them. Meanwhile, you fear rejection, so you act needy. You act needy, so people reject you more. You get rejected more, so you fear rejection even more. That loop can run for years. For some people, it runs for an entire lifetime. Machiavelli would look at that loop and say, "This is how rulers control the masses. Not with chains, not with swords, with fear of disapproval. Break that fear, and suddenly you're no longer easy to manage." Drop this in the comments to start breaking it. Fear cannot control me. 2. Machiavelli's perspective on rejection. The power. No one understands Machiavelli had a ruthless way of seeing the world, and when it came to rejection, his insight was razor sharp. A person who fears rejection will never command respect. In The Prince, he made something very clear. Leaders who try to be loved by everyone end up controlled by everyone. Because when your decisions are based on pleasing the crowd owns you. They determine your choices. They determine your voice. They determine your boundaries. Machiavelli believed something most people today cannot handle. If you must choose, it is safer to be feared than loved. Not feared in the sense of cruelty, feared in the sense that people know you cannot be pushed, bent, manipulated, or swayed by their approval. Apply this to your own life. If you're scared to be rejected, you soften your standards. You accept breadcrumbs instead of demanding value. You stay silent to avoid conflict. You over-explain, over-apologize, over-give. You let people walk all over you because you're terrified they'll walk away. But when you stop fearing rejection, a shift happens. People start respecting you more because they can't control you anymore. History is full of people who faced brutal rejection and became unstoppable because of it. Caesar knew the Senate might reject him when he crossed the Rubicon. He did it anyway. Steve Jobs got rejected by his own company. He came back and built Apple into a global empire. They recognized something life-changing. Rejection is data, not a death sentence. It's feedback, not fate. It's a test of resolve, not a verdict on your worth. These people didn't avoid rejection. They walked directly into it with full awareness that others would criticize, oppose, and try to stop them. And that willingness made them untouchable. When you aren't afraid of someone's no, that person loses power over you entirely. Machiavelli captured this perfectly when he said, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Most people who fear rejection spend their entire lives performing, acting like a watered-down version of themselves, molding their personality to whatever others want. But the person who embraces rejection, they show who they truly are, and the world respects them for it. Drop this affirmation in the comments to cement it. I am untouchable. 3. Dark psychology insight. Rejection as power. Now let's go deeper into the part people almost never talk about. Rejection isn't just something to survive or recover from. Rejection can be weaponized. Most people see rejection as a sign they're not good enough. They make it personal. They internalize it. They shrink. But think about this logically. Who gets rejected more? The person who never risks anything, or the person who takes massive swings? Who gets told no more? The follower or the leader carving their own path? Who faces more criticism? The person keeping their head down, or the innovator threatening the status quo? Rejection is not a sign of weakness. Rejection is a sign of boldness. Every successful entrepreneur, leader, artist, and revolutionary has been rejected so many times that the average person couldn't even count that high. They faced rejected pitches, failed prototypes, ridiculed ideas, dismissed talent, ignored potential, and each no became emotional weight training. This is the desensitization principle. The more you face rejection, the less it hurts. The less it hurts, the more fearless you become. The more fearless you become, the more opportunities you seize. Imagine a warrior training with heavier and heavier armor. Eventually, they move like they're weightless. That's what happens to your emotions when you stop avoiding rejection. Bullets stop feeling like bullets. No stops feeling like an attack. Dismissal stops feeling personal. But most people avoid this training. They stay safe, unchallenged, untouched, weak. The person who deliberately walks toward rejection becomes immune. And once you're immune, people begin chasing your approval instead. Why? Because human psychology reverses itself around confident people. When you desperately want someone's acceptance, they lose interest. When you're indifferent to whether they accept you, they become more interested. The less you need approval, the more people want to give it to you. Think about the most magnetic person at any event. It's never the one trying the hardest. It's the one who seems perfectly fine whether anyone likes them or not. That indifference is powerful. It signals confidence. It signals abundance. It signals self-worth. And people are drawn to that like gravity. This applies everywhere. Business leadership, dating, networking, negotiations, friendships, influence. When you don't fear rejection, you become the prize, the one people work to impress. And here's the best part. You don't need to be fully numb to rejection to get this effect. You only need to act like it doesn't control you. Even if you feel it internally, you don't let it dictate your behavior. You choose your response instead of reacting emotionally. Most people are emotional slaves to rejection. Rejected, so they beg. Dismissed, so they chase. Criticized, so they fold. Powerful people feel the same emotions, but rejected, they shrug. Dismissed, they double down. Criticized, they sharpen their sword. Drop this in the comments to anchor this mindset. Rejection fuels me. 4. Practical Machiavellian tactics. How to turn rejection into your secret weapon. Now let's move from understanding rejection to using it. These aren't feel-good tips. These are Machiavellian tactics, practical, strategic, and designed to shift the power dynamic instantly. Apply even one of these consistently, and you'll feel your confidence change at the molecular level. Let's break down 4 rules that truly transform how you respond to rejection and how others respond to you. Rule 1. Expect rejection. Never beg for acceptance. Most people walk into situations hoping for a yes and terrified of a no. This guarantees weakness. A Machiavellian mind does the opposite. Expect the no. Prepare for the no. Be unbothered by the no. When you expect rejection, you stop walking into situations emotionally exposed. You stop giving people the power to disappoint you. Instead, you make your request, your offer, or your move, and then you detach. The irony is this: people are more likely to say yes to someone who clearly doesn't fear no. Look at how most people ask for things. "I'm so sorry to bother you. This might be a dumb idea. You probably won't have time. But if it's not too much trouble." This is rejection-seeking behavior because it signals weakness before the conversation even starts. Contrast that with someone who speaks with calm certainty. "Here's what I want. Let me know." That energy is magnetic because it's rare. When you expect rejection, you take bigger swings. You approach conversations with clarity. You stop apologizing for existing. You ask directly instead of hinting. You stop shrinking your requests into something safe. And here's the Machiavellian part. Expecting rejection protects you from manipulation. People often use emotional reactions to control you. "How dare you ask that?" "Wow, you're being too confident." "I can't believe you're asking for more." But when you expect resistance, their tactics lose their sting. You stay calm, composed, immovable. That's what Machiavelli meant with the famous metaphor. The fox sees the trap. The lion frightens the wolves. Expect the trap like a fox. Reject intimidation like a lion. Rule 2. Use rejection strategically. Reject others to build value. Here's an advanced tactic most people never understand. Rejection increases value. If anyone can have your time, attention, or approval, those things become worthless. But when you are selective, intentional, and discerning, the value of your yes skyrockets. This doesn't mean being rude. It means having standards. Think about luxury brands, exclusive clubs, or high-demand experts. They're desirable precisely because not everyone gets access to them. The same psychology applies to you. When you occasionally say no, people value your presence more. Your approval becomes something to earn. Your time looks rare, and rarity creates demand. A consultant who turns away clients seems more skilled than one who accepts everyone. A leader who doesn't try to please everyone appears stronger. A person who has boundaries is more attractive than someone who is available to anyone. But here's the key difference between power and pettiness. Your rejections must be based on real standards, not games. People can feel the difference between a person rejecting them because their standards are high and a person rejecting them just to feel superior. The first creates respect. The second creates resentment. Machiavellian rejection is strategic, not emotional. Rule 3. Display boldness. Walk straight into situations others avoid. This rule is pure Machiavelli. In a world full of timid, approval-seeking people, boldness is shocking, memorable, magnetic. Boldness is the willingness to ask the hard question, state the unpopular thought. Take the big risk, voice the truth everyone else avoids, make the move others hesitate to make. Boldness is not recklessness. Boldness is calculated courage. And here's what Machiavelli observed. People respect boldness even when it fails. People fear boldness when it succeeds. Either way, boldness elevates you. When you display boldness, people assume you know something they don't. They assume you have options. They assume you have confidence. They assume you're worth following. They assume you're prepared for consequences. Your reputation becomes self-fulfilling. Bold people get bigger opportunities because boldness itself is rare. And when boldness leads to rejection, you still win. You win. clarity, experience, information, respect. Machiavelli said it best. The one who waits for how things ought to be will be ruined long before they're ready. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Stop waiting for guaranteed yeses. Face the possibility of rejection head on. Leaders act. Followers wait for permission. Rule 4. Control the frame. Rejection reflects them, not you. This one is the most powerful reframe you will ever adopt. When someone rejects you, it says far more about them than about you. Rejection is not an evaluation of your worth, an X-ray of your potential, a prophecy about your future. Rejection is simply someone else's perspective, limitations, fears, biases, short-sightedness, lack of information. The person rejecting you does not have full insight into your character, your strengths, your vision, your potential, your future. They're making a judgment based on a tiny sliver of who you are. When you internalize this truth, rejection stops feeling personal. You stop being controlled emotionally, your self-worth becomes independent. You stop questioning your value. You start questioning the accuracy of others' perceptions. Think of all the people history rejected. The Beatles were told they had no future in music. J.K. Rowling was rejected by 12 publishers. Airbnb was rejected by investors dozens of times. Were those rejections accurate? Or were they failures of vision? You already know the answer. When someone rejects you romantically, professionally, or socially, your first thought should not be, "What's wrong with me?" It should be, "What are they unable to see?" This is control of the frame. Rejection becomes information sorting filtering, not judgment. Drop this affirmation in the comments. Their loss, my gain. 5. Ruling through fearlessness, Machiavelli's ultimate principle. Here's where everything comes together. Machiavelli believed something that most modern people simply aren't ready to hear. The person who does not fear rejection is impossible to control. Think about how different your life becomes when the fear of no stops running the show. Most people spend their entire existence in avoidance mode. They're constantly trying to dodge embarrassment, dodge criticism, dodge judgment, dodge failure, dodge risk. They shape their entire identity around preventing rejection. They avoid opportunities, avoid new environments, avoid hard conversations, avoid asking for what they want, avoid standing out, avoid saying the truth, and they convince themselves that this is being cautious. But really, it's fear of rejection wearing a mask. Fearless people operate from a completely different reality. They speak their truth, even if it's unpopular, pursue their goals, even when people doubt them, take leadership positions, even when others say they're unqualified, walk into opportunities others are too scared to consider, ask boldly, because no doesn't damage their ego. This fearlessness becomes their greatest competitive advantage. Most people freeze at the possibility of a negative reaction. You won't. Most people need permission to act. You won't. Most people modify themselves for approval. You won't. This difference creates a power gap that grows wider and wider the older you get. When you stop fearing rejection, you stop waiting for validation. You stop hoping people will choose you. You stop seeking permission. You stop asking, "Is this okay?" And you start saying, "This is what I'm doing." That shift alone puts you in the top 1% of mental strength. Fearlessness makes people follow you. Think of the leaders you admire most, real or fictional. Do they water down their message to avoid rejection? Do they ask permission before they act? Do they adjust their identity depending on who's watching? Of course not. They state their truth and let the world adjust. They pursue their mission and let others decide whether to join them. They stand firm in their values and let the critics shout from the sidelines. That's why people follow them. People are drawn to those who seem free from the fears that dominate everyone else. When someone operates without the constant need for approval, it creates a magnetism that others can't explain. You become the person who sets the tone, sets the pace, sets the standards, sets the direction. And others naturally start aligning with you because you appear to know where you're going, even if they don't fully understand the path. The power flip. You become the one people fear rejection. From once you overcome your fear of rejection, something fascinating happens. The entire power dynamic reverses. You stop being afraid of their rejection, and they start being afraid of yours. Think about how powerful that is. When someone fears losing your approval, they try harder. They respect boundaries. They don't waste your time. They treat you carefully. They speak to you differently. They present their best self. You become the gravitational center of the interaction. This is why overcoming rejection is the closest thing to a superpower in human psychology. Most people never develop this. They stay fear-based their entire lives, always chasing, rarely choosing. But when you don't fear being rejected, you become the chooser, you become the selector, you become the person who decides who enters your life, you become the standard. This is the essence of dominance, not intimidation, but freedom. Rejection becomes a filter, not a threat. Most people take rejection personally, but people who understand power treat rejection like a sorting system. Every rejection is simply someone showing they can't see your value, someone revealing their limited vision, someone signaling they're not aligned. Someone self-eliminating. Rejection stops being an insult and becomes a refinement tool. Every no removes someone who was not meant for the path you're building. You begin to see rejection as protection, redirection, filtration information, and your emotional response changes completely. Instead of feeling hurt, you feel clarity. Instead of feeling attacked, you feel informed. Instead of feeling unwanted, you feel selective. This is emotional liberation. The birth of a new identity. This transformation doesn't happen in one day, but it starts in one moment. The moment you realize. You don't need people's permission to exist or to succeed. Once that truth sinks in, everything accelerates. Every rejection becomes training. Every dismissal becomes an exercise in resilience. Every ignored message becomes practice in detachment. Every no becomes emotional weightlifting. While everyone else is avoiding the guard at the gate, you learn the secret. The guard only stops those who fear him. Walk past him without hesitation, and suddenly you realize nothing was ever really in your way. Your new identity forms. Independent, fearless, self-directed, strategic, bold, unbothered. You stop playing by rules designed to keep you small. You start setting your own. You stop trying to fit into other people's systems. You build your own. You stop trying to impress others. Now they try to impress you. And just like that, without shouting, without fighting, without forcing, you rise. You shift from the one seeking acceptance to the one granting it. From the one who fears rejection to the one who uses it. From the one who is controlled to the one who rules. Drop this in the comments to lock it in. I fear nothing. I rule everything. Rejection has never been the enemy. It's the doorway you've avoided, the teacher you've ignored, the tool you've never learned to use. And once you stop fearing it, you unlock the exact kind of freedom Machiavelli believed creates unshakable power. Let's close this out by showing you how to integrate everything into your identity. Because fearlessness isn't a tactic, it's a transformation. The moment you stop asking for permission, your life begins. Most people live like they're waiting in line for approval. Every decision is filtered through invisible judges. Will they like this? Will they think I'm stupid? What if they disagree? What if they reject me? This mindset quietly destroys potential. The truth is brutally simple. Your life accelerates the moment you stop needing anyone's permission. Confident people don't wait for validation. They act. They don't ask, "Is this okay?" They say, "This is what I'm doing." And when you operate like that, people feel it. They assume you know something they don't. They sense conviction. They sense certainty. They sense direction. And humans follow direction more than perfection. That's why leaders rise even when they're flawed, and why thousands of talented people remain invisible. Leadership is an energy, not a reward. When you stop needing approval, you start living on your own terms, and people can't help but respect that. Fearlessness changes how the world treats you. There's a hidden shift that happens when you stop fearing rejection. People begin treating you differently. They speak to you with more respect because they know you won't tolerate disrespect. They value your time because they know you're willing to walk away. They follow your lead because you're not chasing their acceptance. The power dynamic flips. You're no longer afraid of their no. They become afraid of losing your yes. This is why fearlessness is magnetic. Most people live their whole lives terrified of disapproval. When they meet someone who isn't, someone who can handle rejection without flinching, someone who acts boldly without waiting for applause, that person stands out instantly. People want to be around someone who doesn't bend under pressure, someone who doesn't shrink to avoid judgment, someone who makes choices without waiting for group approval. Fearlessness creates a gravitational pull. Rejection becomes a filter, not a threat. Here is the mindset shift that will set you free. Rejection is not a verdict, it's information. When someone rejects your idea, they're showing their lack of vision. When someone rejects your value, they're revealing their insecurity. When someone rejects your presence, they're expressing their limitations. Rejection is not about your worth. It's about the other person's perspective, fears, and blind spots. The strongest people understand this. They don't crumble when someone says no. They don't take it personally. They don't beg for acceptance. Instead, they treat rejection like a sorting mechanism. A no removes people who aren't aligned with your mission. A no filters out bad opportunities. A no saves you from wasting time on the wrong paths. Rejection becomes protection, not humiliation. Fearlessness must be practiced, not imagined. Understanding this isn't enough. You have to train it. Powerful people purposely put themselves in situations where rejection is possible. Asking for opportunities, pitching ideas, meeting new people, raising their standards, speaking honestly, taking risks. Each time they survive a no, they become stronger. Each time they face discomfort, they grow bolder. Each time they move forward anyway, they become more untouchable. Weak people avoid these moments. Strong people seek them. That's the difference. The final flip. You become the one who rules your world. Machiavelli's ultimate lesson is this: the person who does not fear rejection cannot be controlled. Not by criticism, not by opinions, not by failure, not by uncertainty, not by the crowd. When rejection loses its power over you, your real life begins. You stop performing. You stop apologizing. You stop shrinking. You stop waiting. You start choosing. You start acting. You start leading. You start rising. And you rise not because others accept you, but because you finally accept yourself. To seal this transformation, drop this final affirmation in the comments. I fear nothing. I choose my path. I rule my life.